Hello, I am Max and you're watching Cool Stuff in Weird Cars. And in this video we're checking out the 2019 Mazda 3 Hatchback with all-wheel drive. And there is a slight chance you might recognize this car because it's owned by a fellow YouTuber. Zach from Shooting Cars just drove down here. He's actually out in my Celsior right now. He's also going to shoot the Intrepid. But while he's doing that, I get to shoot his 2019 Mazda 3. The exterior color of this car is known as machine gray, and Zach was actually telling me that it's a little thin, it seems like, because there is actually a few rock chips already in the front of the car. Of course, this being a new car, it does have a lot of the newer features. Here's the key, which has a few buttons on it right here on the side. You have a lock and unlock button, simple as that. You can also lock and unlock it from just touching this right here. This car does feature the kind of cream white leather interior. I believe all the hatches came with leather, as well as you get black accents all around. And for controls here on the door, you get power mirrors, as well as fully auto power windows on all four corners, as well as your window locks. Lock buttons up top, and a little bit of storage down below. This interior is not styled too bad. I know the outside of these cars causes a little bit of commotion, specifically the hatchbacks, but the interior is pretty nice. And so to start this car, similar to the Jeep, you just hit the brake, hit the button over here to start. It does have a nice little chime that plays. But we'll go ahead and close this door, and we'll check out the rest of the interior. Over here on the left, you do have a button to turn off all of your safety settings, which is basically the lane guidance and lane keep assist and stuff like that. Turn that off right there, and it'll give you a little icon there on the dash saying that's off, and of course you can turn it back on as well. Otherwise, you do have a traction control off button over here as well, and of course your headlight controls, which are automatic. Nice 3-spoke steering wheel, I do like this design. Over here on the left of the steering wheel, you do have your radio controls as well as your phone options and your info button, which changes your center screen up here, and your cruise control here on the right. Which this car does have radar cruise control, which is a very nice option, because this thing's basically a base model, other than a few options here and there, such as the cruise control here. And to the right of the steering wheel, you do have your wiper controls, which just does have auto rain sensing wipers, which is also very nice for a base model sort of car. Up top you do have your gauges. On the left is a tachometer. In the middle is a screen that I've been talking about a little bit, and on the right is the fuel gauge as well as temperature gauge as well as some warning lights. Now, as I mentioned, you can also hit info here and it'll run through a few of the options. Basically you have a speedometer that shows up when you hit that once, some driving information if you hit it twice. It is a nice system. I do like the way it looks. It kind of blends in with the gauges, so you don't really notice the fact that it's actually a screen that much until you actually look at something other than just a speedometer, but it's pretty nice. And over to the right, you do have the infotainment system, which is controlled right down here in the center console. Basically you use this little wheel to scroll through your stuff, and you press it down if you want to select something. There is some interesting stuff in here. There's a back button as well. Very simple to use. See your information, fuel efficiency monitor, vehicle status monitor, stuff like that. Entertainment, which is of course your radio. Navigation, of course. And your settings, which there's a lot of settings you can change in here, surprisingly. Safety settings, sound settings. You could change, like he said, you could change the volume of the turn signal even in here, which is pretty crazy. I'm not a huge fan of these center screens myself, but of course I drive all cars that are 16 years or older, so that's probably why. But that's basically that. It's very nice to look at. It does have CarPlay and Android Auto, I believe, and it's just a nice system. Definitely nice to look at. Going down below that, you have your climate control, which is very simple to use. Fan speed here in the middle, which actually is nice because it has actual buttons instead of just being things that you tap. Okay, power button over here, as well as it is dual zone. Front and rear defrosters, flashers, USB down here, a little bit of storage, cup holders, and back here is the 6-speed automatic transmission. Of course, very simple to operate. Does have a sport button there to the left, your power e-brake, and auto hold. You also get shortcuts to various menus down here, which is very nice, and your actual volume slider over here, as well as a power button. Below that, you have a little favorites button for the center screen. Back behind, you do have a center console, which apparently only slides back and then goes up. You can't just lift it up straight out of the bat, and you can also just move it to wherever you'd like, pretty much. You can also just move it back to a certain spot and it'll stay locked there. So if you want the armrest further back, you can have it there. But there's just a little bit of storage in here. There's USB up in front, stuff like that. There we go. A little bit of a pain. It's all right. Up top, you do get a manually dimming rearview mirror. Passenger airbag off light up above that, and a couple of lights, and I believe sunglasses storage, yes. And no garage door opener. You do get a mirror up here, which is nice. And also you get an extra piece to slide out on the right. And so, we'll go ahead and shut it off. Just hit the button to stop. And we'll check out the rest of the outside. The doors do open pretty wide, which is very nice. The car will beep once to let you know that you took the key with you, and if you back up a little bit further, it will beep again saying that it is locked. And now here comes the interesting part of this, because the styling of this car is a little polarizing. Some people love it, some people hate it. Up front, it's not too bad. No complaints up here usually. You have nice headlights. You have the radar cruise control behind the Mazda badge right there. Nothing too fancy on the hood or around the windshield. It's very flat seeming. Once you get around here to the back is where you get to the spot that people tend to not like as much, which is this huge C-pillar right here, which is an interesting design choice for sure from Mazda. It's also not very good for visibility, which I'll talk about more later in the video whenever I drive this thing. But definitely not something that people are a huge fan of. This car, of course, does have the Skyactiv G engine, and it is all-wheel drive, as I mentioned, which was an option as well. I do like the brake lights, though. They do have a nice design to them. They have some LED elements. Do get a rear windshield wiper. The wheels are grayed out. They look pretty nice. Just have a clean design, but there's nothing really to break up the sides of this car at all. There's no real body lines, or there's one body line down below, but otherwise it's all just very flat is the word that comes to mind, but I don't know if that's specifically the word I should be using for it, but not too bad overall. And we'll pop the hood. And of course, as the badges outside suggest, this is the 2.5 liter Skyactiv G engine. It's an inline 4, makes about 186 horsepower and 186 foot-pounds of torque. Just the basic little 4-cylinder, no turbo or anything. Gas mileage is pretty decent. I think he's getting like 32 on average, which is not bad at all, especially considering this is all-wheel drive. But nothing really fancy under here. And so we'll check out the passenger side. You get nice Mazda 3 branded floor mats in this car. Of course, you still get storage in the door as well. And really otherwise, nothing too much crazy. You do get a glove box up in front. And some vents up top. And we'll check out the back. This is where this car shines a little bit more than the sedan, because this is the small car. And it has a little more space here in the back, a little more headroom, stuff like that. I don't think I'll be able to get in very easily on this side. But it's not too bad in here. You do get a nice little pocket here in the back of the front seat. Of course, more storage down there. Handle and a coat hook up on top here. And actually, as you can see here, space is not too terrible. The front seat is where I can drive this car, and I have a very small amount of space in front of my knees, only if I'm in the middle, but it's better than nothing. As well as you do get a nice center console that folds down here. It does have cup holders in it. And of course, a big part of that And of course, a big part of the hatchback here is the actual hatchback itself. Very easy to open, it has a power release there. There are a few things in here. Nothing too crazy though. And there's actually a decent amount of space. Somewhat deep. And you have a nice, easy to load in load floor there. You can also flip the back seats forward. And you can also lock all the doors from this button right here, which is very nice. Okay, so now we're behind the wheel, if I can figure out how to situate myself here. We're behind the wheel of the 2019 Mazda 3 all-wheel drive hatch, and we'll take it for a nice little drive. Interesting things to note before you get going off in this thing. One is that this microphone is right behind that. First things to note, put in the drive, you have to turn off the automatic or the electronic parking brake every single time. You just push that down for a second and it turns off. And we'll go ahead and set off here. I do have the AC on a little high, so hopefully the audio is not too terrible. But let us see how this thing drives. I'll take it down some twisties here real quick. But first thing I'm noticing that the visibility is not fantastic. I'm looking out the rearview mirror here real quick, and there is not a whole lot of space to see out of. And I know that if I look over my shoulder, well, it's not too bad to the left because I got the rear window right here, which is also not very big, mind you. But the visibility is not fantastic out the back. Out the front, it's not too bad because we do have a nice big windshield, and the windows are fine. The belt line is a little higher. But the windows aren't too bad, the side windows aren't too bad. It's just those rear windows and the actual rear window itself that are definitely not the best for visibility. The rearview mirror is nice and big though, which is fantastic. It's actually kind of curved too, which is interesting. But otherwise, we are currently just here in drive mode, or normal mode I should say. This thing, it seems to handle pretty good. It is a small car for new standards. I'm sure this thing's probably weighs as much as my old Ford Ranger did. But otherwise, the speedometer on the screen is very nice to have in front of me. I do like the fact that it looks like an actual gauge when it's in this mode. You can also, of course, like I said, you can turn it to just a digital display, or you can have it to where it's just like your radar cruise control. I guess I could shift into manual mode, and we'll also go into sport mode here real quick. It says a little sport on the center gauge there right now. Of course, the car in front of me did not have the turn signal on, and they're going the same way as me. Ooh. It's not even like close to full acceleration. It gets up and goes. It's actually pretty peppy. The manual shifting is pretty nice. Seems pretty nice to me. Of course, it is only 6-speed, unlike some of the other cars, some other new cars, I should say. Like the Jeep I just drove was an 8-speed automatic, which that thing just had too many gears, and it was just kind of silly. You can also do this thing, the auto hold thing. So I'll just stop here, and I can take my foot off the brakes, and it stays where it is until I hit the gas, which is very nice. But I'd like to actually hold my brake pedal. That's just something I like to do. But really, the seat's in a comfortable position. The seat itself is not bad. It's got a decent amount of cushion to it. Not a ton, but more than some cars I've driven. And like I said, it does have all the nice things to help you see around, of course. You have a backup camera, you have blind spot monitoring, you have all kinds of newer stuff that'll definitely help you out with driving this thing. He needed a new daily driver. He was driving a Miata, wasn't quite working out for the highway, so he bought this thing, and he seems to really like it. And I can see why. Like, if you don't look behind you, it's great. It's just, I don't know. I love cars with big visibility. That's why, my LS400 and the Celsior have a lot of visibility. My old Ranger had a lot of visibility. My Ram has decent visibility. So I'm used to that, and this thing is not quite as good. Ooh. That's not bad. Acceleration's not too terrible. It's definitely not fast. I think my Celsior might beat it in a race, but it's not bad at all. Let's see if it'll get this. Oh, if you go past a certain point, it will downshift itself in manual mode, which is interesting. It does also give me my miles per gallon that I'm getting as I'm driving too, which is nice. I always like that feature in cars. But it's nice and quiet in here, which is another huge plus, of course, for something you're going to be driving on the highway a lot. But we'll take her around a few little twisties up here as well, see what it has to offer. I think he said he gets upwards of 30 miles per gallon in this thing, which is not bad for an all-wheel drive car. And so I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but sadly I think my GoPro stopped recording after this point, so I don't actually have any footage of me driving this car on the twisty roads. Basically, I was saying how the car was it's very stable around corners, for sure. It handles them well, and it stays pretty glued to the road pretty easily. I'm sure the all-wheel drive helps out with that a lot. And otherwise, it was pretty standard. The automatic is as good as the automatic can get. Of course, being that this car is not a manual transmission car. But that's about it. So, that will conclude this video. Again, I apologize for apparently my GoPro just stopping recording and me not realizing it. But hey, things happen. So thank you all so much for watching this video. Of course, you can check out Zach's channel in the description below. If you want to see more videos of this car, check him out. But that will be it for my video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.